Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Just a piece of housekeeping at the beginning of the episode. There is some construction nearby where I'm recording, so my apologies in advance if some of this noise is distracting. First up, yesterday, UK-based The Financial Times published a good piece called "China is Suffering Its Own China Shock." I wanted to begin today's video by examining some of the salient points made in the piece. China, once the world's leading hub for low-cost manufacturing, is now experiencing its own version of the so-called China shock that it once imposed on developed economies, bringing an end to the China as we have known it. That is, a cheap manufacturing nation. As the country transitions toward automation and higher-end production, millions of jobs in labor-intensive industries are disappearing, posing significant challenges to economic stability and social cohesion. In the early 2000s, China leveraged its abundant cheap labor to dominate global manufacturing, particularly in industries such as textiles, footwear, and basic electronics. The country's efficient supply chains, supportive government policies, and low operational costs made it the world's factory. However, rising wages, increasing competition from countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and India, and geopolitical tensions, including trade restrictions from the United States, have eroded China's competitive advantage. For example, China's share of global footwear exports has declined by 10 percentage points over the past decade, with countries like Vietnam and Indonesia absorbing the lost market share. Similar trends are observed in other labor-intensive industries such as apparel, toys, and furniture. Small and medium-sized manufacturers across China now face a critical choice: invest in automation or risk obsolescence. A study of 12 labor-intensive industries found that employment shrank by nearly 4 million jobs between 2011 and 2019, with an additional 3.4 million jobs lost between 2019 and 2023. In the textile industry alone, employment plummeted by 40% over the past decade. Many factories that once flourished in China's Pearl River Delta and Yangtze River Delta regions are shutting down or moving operations to cheaper destinations like Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Cambodia. Beijing is responding by promoting advanced manufacturing and high-technology industries. However, while these sectors drive economic growth, they require far fewer workers, exacerbating the displacement of low-skilled employees. Frederick Newman, chief Asia economist at HSBC, notes that, quote, "China's comparative advantage in cheap labor is over, and its transition to high-technology production will not create enough jobs to compensate for those lost." End quote. The push for high-end manufacturing such as electric vehicles, robotics, and semiconductor production, trends we've been following very closely here on China Update, is capital intensive and does not generate as many jobs as traditional factory work. And of course, China has literally tens of millions of frankly poorly educated, low-skilled workers that still need jobs. China's leadership under General Secretary Xi Jinping has emphasized new quality productive forces as a means of sustaining economic growth. Policymakers hope that high-technology investments will not only replace lost manufacturing jobs, but also drive domestic consumption and innovation. However, some analysts remain skeptical about whether these measures will be sufficient to prevent widespread unemployment. The move towards automation, coupled with demographic challenges, to put it mildly, is making it increasingly difficult for China to sustain job creation at the same pace as previous decades. Unlike Western nations that responded to deindustrialization by expanding their service economies, China faces unique challenges due to its demographic decline and the reluctance of younger, more educated workers to enter manufacturing jobs. Most concerningly for Beijing, labor unrest is already on the rise. The China Labor Bulletin recorded 452 protests, major protests, in the manufacturing sector last year alone, the highest in nearly a decade. These disruptions, driven by factory closures, wage arrears, and company relocations, highlight the growing social pressures that accompany economic transformation. The increasing number of labor disputes suggests that many workers are struggling to adapt to the rapid economic shift, with many older and less skilled workers unable to transition to new industries. Essentially, what China is seeing is this deindustrialization and the disruptive effects it's having on many working class folks. Those of us in the West know the story all too well. But unlike developed economies, China will be doing it on a vastly greater scale. and without the wealth to help with the transition. As China moves forward, the challenges will be balancing technological progress with the need for job creation. If left unaddressed, the decline in low-end manufacturing could lead to broader social instability, echoing the disruptions seen in Western economies during their own periods of industrial decline. The government's ability to manage this transition will play a crucial role in shaping China's economic future. Failure to do so could result in widespread discontent or worse. Next up, yesterday, Tuesday, the US Department of Commerce significantly expanded its export restrictions, adding 80 entities across China, the United Arab Emirates, South Africa, Iran, and other countries to its entity list. The move, the first major China-related export control action under President Trump's new administration, aims to close loopholes that have allowed Chinese firms to bypass previous restrictions on advanced technology exports. The new sanctions target Chinese companies involved in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and hypersonic weapons development. Among them are Netrix Information Industry, Beijing Academy of Artificial Intelligence, and Beijing Innovation Wisdom Technology Co. Netrix was the subject of a 2024 US-based New York Times investigation that revealed its connections to Sugon, a previously blacklisted firm, and its efforts to acquire AI-related hardware despite US sanctions. The Commerce Department also closed gaps in restrictions against Inspire Group, a major supplier of AI-capable servers to the Chinese military, while Inspur, INSPUR, was placed on the entity list in 2023. Its subsidiaries continued purchasing US chips from Intel and Nvidia. The latest action extends the Foreign Direct Product Rule, FDPR, to those subsidiaries, effectively cutting them off from US technology. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick emphasized that the US, quote, will not allow adversaries to exploit American technology to bolster their militaries and threaten American lives. End quote. These measures are expected to significantly impact China's access to advanced computing and AI chips, further complicating its military modernization efforts. China has identified the AI and chip race as an existential struggle, and so there will continue to be efforts to get around these restrictions, procure advanced imports, and the cat-and-mouse game is only set to continue. If you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, I have a big favor to ask, that is just to hit the like button, and if you've not done so already, subscribe. This week is the second week of my new second channel, Market Update. Today's episode went up just about an hour ago. It's a big episode covering a lot of very interesting developments across North America, Europe, and Asia, including fears of a massive AI bubble, which could dwarf the tech crash of the 1990s, as well as the biggest currency crash since the 1998 Asian financial crisis. I've put the link to this new video in the description below, so if you have some time, maybe check it out. And finally for today, India is reportedly evaluating a relaxation of some trade and investment restrictions imposed on China following the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes. According to India-based The Indian Express, government departments are engaging in discussions to, quote, dilute or neutralize, end quote, certain restrictions, potentially allowing Chinese firms to re-enter sectors where they were previously barred. This move is seen as part of India's broader strategy to hedge against potential disruptions from new US policies. Among the proposed measures are the easing of visa restrictions for Chinese business personnel, lifting specific tariffs and non-tariff barriers on imports, and even reconsidering the ban on some Chinese mobile applications. Industry groups, particularly those reliant on Chinese manufacturing and components, have pushed for such relaxations to mitigate supply chain disruptions and maintain competitive market conditions. Diplomatic engagement between India and China has also intensified. The Times of India, also based in India, reports that the two nations recently held talks in Beijing, described as, quote, positive and constructive, end quote, by India's Ministry of External Affairs. These discussions reviewed the border situation and explored mechanisms to prevent escalation along the line of actual control, a geopolitical flashpoint on the Himalayan boundary between China and India. Both sides have exchanged views on reviving cross-border exchanges, including the resumption of a significant pilgrimage route for Indian devotees. While no formal policy changes have been announced, the ongoing discussions suggest a pragmatic recalibration of India's approach to China, balancing geopolitical concerns with economic considerations. We will see how things unfold in the coming months. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.